everybody, it's Romania Black. Oh my god, we're on episode 2 already. Man, I'm not gonna lie with y'all. I watched episode 1 probably 3 or 4 times in a row after I got done editing of season 4. I kind of am in love with it. I'm kind of in love with this season so far. I'm in love with the OP, with the ED. I'm really enjoying this, and we're only 1 episode in, and so I'm really excited. I'm like, we have such a journey ahead of us, but so much has happened in the few days between me watching episode 1 and this episode, so this will be a little bit longer of an intro. I do have some notes from episode 22 that aired on Patreon and episode 20 that aired on YouTube. Just a couple of extra notes from the last couple of days, but you won't believe this. I was trying to think of, in the recap, how I was going to structure, because there's so many different topics and everything, and I'm a teacher, and so today was our faculty in-service, and we had a guest speaker come in, and the guest speaker was talking about the essential elements of dignity, and was talking about this idea of human compassion and human sustainability. And the more he was talking, I suddenly got my phone out and started taking notes. I was like, this is Attack on Titan. This is going to relate to season 4. Oh my God. So I have these like elements of dignity and 10 temptations. This whole setup, I could write a whole thesis about Attack on Titan based on his conversation that we had in our in-service today. So I'm going to save most of it for the recap, because there's just so much. And what I'm going to do is go through these episodes, and as I go with part 1 of season 4, I'm going to be making notes. There's like 10 essential elements and 10 temptations of dignity, and how they establish human connection and dialogue. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need. This is a framework. So I'm just going to be an English nerd for 2 seconds and tell you all that when we get to the recap, I'm going to be basing a lot of my symbolism and thematic elements on this man's presentation, because I was so euphoric today during our in-service. I was like making all these notes on my phone, and my colleagues were like, man, you're really taking notes about this presentation. And I was like, you have no idea. I was like, they have no clue that I'm going to apply it to Attack on Titan. So really excited about that. But a lot of the points he talked about today, all I could think about was episode 1. And going back and editing episode 1, I was so confused in the reaction, because I had expected us to instantly start with Parody versus Marley, but that's not how we're doing things. Isayama's like, no, the world's a lot bigger than that. That it's not just Marley versus Parody. There's the world to take into account, which I really like that Isayama does that, because it's very true to life, right? It's very true to life. But I've got some notes that I want to do real quick before we start episode 2, Midnight Train. I'm like, oh yeah. So, first of all, going back to season 3, Calico Cat on YouTube noted that I'd been wondering what happened with Erwin after he died. And Calico Cat pointed out that in an interview with Isayama, he stated that Levi took Erwin's remains, or bones, back, which means to me that they cremated him, back for a specially honored funeral in Shiganshina, and he was the only one that got that. So I'm like, basically Levi went and held a private funeral for Erwin. My shipper heart, I'm like, that's right, Levi, you take Erwin's remains back and give him a proper burial. You do that. But also, going back, I rewatched, also after I rewatched episode 1 like 3 times, I was like, I need to go back and rewatch episodes 20, 21, and 22. And so I did, and they're really dour and really bitter. And I was like, oh, so this is how we're doing it, Isayama. We're just gonna... And a lot of these comments will relate to Eren. So Eren's dream from episode 1, Lucas Santos pointed out that Eren's dream from episode 1 makes much more sense now that we know that the memories from Kruger and Grisha were passing on to him regardless. So it's kind of crazy, right? That moment at the end of episode 21 where Kruger was recalling memories of someone that he didn't even know from the future, that relating to Eren. It makes sense why Eren had the dream now in episode 1 before he even gained the Attack Titan's powers. It's like everybody's all connected through the coordinate and through the Eldians. They're all connected, so there's a chance that any visions they have are just a connective element of their being. I'm like, cool. Good. Is it fate? Was it genetics? I don't know. Is it because he's Grisha's son that he had those visions and it's genetic? Is it fate that it was predetermined he was going to get Kruger's power? If it's fate, then that opens up a whole can of worms of Eren's predicament, and it is interesting. So Sagnorm talked about how Grisha could have had Keith in mind to take his place at first, because it was noted, I noted in the last reaction, that Grisha was pretty much at the end of his rope when he died. When Eren ate him, he was pretty much at the 13-year mark, and he had to pass on that power. And so I like Sagnorm's idea that Grisha could have had Keith in mind, because back in the flashback of episode 20, and in episode 21, even in Bystander, Grisha was really enamored by Keith's resolve and his sense of freedom. But then Keith kind of fell off the deep end and decided he didn't want to pursue that anymore. So maybe in that moment, Grisha was like, I can't use you anymore. You're not going to follow through. Aaron's my only option. And that probably led him to that. But Sagnorm and several of you have also pointed out this fact, and I think this is really interesting. The Marleyans, I talked in the last episode about the Marleyans wanting the Founding Titan to control all the other Titans. But now that Sagnorm and a lot of you others have pointed this out, I don't think that's the case. Because the Marleyans have been sending people transformed into Titans towards Parady's wall in an attempt to break through and kill all of humanity there. But essentially, all that the Marleyans are doing is giving ammunition to Parody. They're transforming people into Titans and sending them over to Parody to be used as they could. If the Founding Titan decided that they wanted to fight back, they could use all those Titans that they transformed to attack Marley. So I'm like, so the only thing I can figure out is a couple of options. One, Marley does not fully know the power of the Founding Titan and how much control the Founding Titan has over the other Titans. One, Marley doesn't know that. That's an option. Two, the Titans can't swim, so the Marleyans are like, well, we'll send all these Titans over. They can't swim, so what they going to do? They're in this primitive technological state. They're not coming over here. Or three, there's a third option that I don't know yet, and I'm very curious about it and that brings out another thing. Zeke doing this last episode bringing the idea that they could take the Zeppelin and like fire the Titans down as bombs. I'm like, well, why didn't Marley just send a Zeppelin over to Parody and do that to begin with? Are they that afraid that the Founding Titan is going to attack them back if they try something like that? Are they that? And I guess that's the point, is that they're still fearful of the threat that the Founding Titan would take, because as some of you have established, there are millions of Titans that are the size of the Colossal Titan in those walls. If you released all of those and attacked with them, that's a big threat. So maybe there is some bite to that, and that's why they haven't gone as full scale as they have. But yeah, Sagnorm, they're basically just giving the king more weapons. Why would you do that? I don't know. My Catharsis pointed out the fact, I love the line of history is written by the winners. Yeah, and the truth is somewhere in between. Yeah, we're finding this out that the Marleyan side, because they were the victors all those years ago, they've rewrote history and are brainwashing the Eldians that are currently in Marley with that history, but it's just history written by them. It's just their perspective. And I'm sure that it's twisted things and left things out and inconveniently for them isn't telling the full scope of the things. And the truth isn't quite where Grisha thought it was, and it's not really where Marley thought it was. It's somewhere in this gray area in between. And I find that really interesting. El Ribeiro 97 commented how the X that the restorationists carve into their bodies is like the X that's in the ED for season 2, the X that's by Ymir Fritz. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Again, I'm wondering, Ymir Fritz like being this cross section of humanity and the Titans. I'm still curious about Ymir Fritz's backstory, and I feel like with the ED, when we see Ymir and the big tree expanding from her, that we're going to get more to that as the season goes on. Eric, thank you for doing this, but doing the math, back in the recap, I was trying to do the math, and back in episode 20, I was trying to do the math, and there was a whole 2,000 years to you in the future, and I was trying to figure it out, but Eric did the math, and basically, at the end of episode 22 of season 3, there are technically 8 years left until the 2,000 year mark from when Ymir Fritz first got her power. So that's what it is. Technically, and that makes me wonder if we are going to end this series, if Attack on Titan is going to end at that 2000 mark, when Eren is supposed to die, when all that's supposed to come to a head, if that's when it's going to actually end. That'd be really cool if the very first chapter was actually the end point. The very first chapter title was referencing the end point of the entire series. That would be really, really cool. So thank you for doing the math, Eric. That's really cool. I don't want to be spoiled, obviously, but that was really neat. And then Sacha Purvis noted that the shell that Armin holds in episode 22 of season 3 is a representation of the dream of freedom for him and Eren. But now Eren is like the shell and is a hollow shell of himself. And once he's hit the sea, he no longer has the same dream as Armin. And yeah, when I go back and rewatch the episode, Eren, I like the character development that Eren has received in this series, but I feel so bad for Eren, and he's just all these memories, all these different bodies inhabiting him. Grisha and Kruger and the Founding Titan, it's definitely altered his perspective intensely. And now I'm worried that there is no going back for Eren. And that really, I kind of almost miss Eren being like the emotional character that he was right before the end of episode 22, because now he seems like he's just empty. And that really makes me curious and nervous for what's happened over the last 4 years to his character. If he's had 4 years to spend delving into his father's memories, that's a bit freaky, right? So there's that. Christopher Peterson noted, we were talking about, I love everybody's discussion of Flock. I love it. For the record, I find Flock a very interesting character. I don't love Flock, but I find him very interesting, and I get really excited about his character because his character is different than many of the others in this world, and I find it, whenever Isayama introduces a character with a very unique perspective, I find it fascinating, and so I'm fascinated by Flock. I don't necessarily agree with him on some things, and Flock noted, or Christopher Peterson noted, that Flock, when he was talking to Hitch, talked up Marlowe, but he did not mention any of the accolades for Erwin, that quote-unquote devil, which is funny because he's an Eldian. Right? And so, and his outburst at Eren in that episode is very similar to Eren's outburst in the courtroom scene in episode 14 of season 1, where he had the outburst being like, I'm going to tell you all how it is. Flock, in hindsight, he's very similar to Jean. He's also very similar to Eren, like season 1 Eren, which is interesting. And so I'm wondering if they're going to do anything with that. And then these last two notes, as I'm over 11 minutes, it's fine. My last two notes are actually rewatching episode 1. It dawned on me that, one, Colt crying when the Titans are falling from the sky onto the city is not only Colt being sad for his own people being used as bombs in this case, but it's also because Colt's going to inherit the Beast Titans form. And if the whole Scream thing where he can turn people into Titans is a Beast Titan specific ability, then of course Colt would be crying because he's going to realize that once he's in that form, he's going to have to do the exact same thing as the Beast Titan. He's going to have to transform his own kind into these weapons as well. And that's really sad. And then the other thing is Falco. Upon rewatching this episode a few times, I really like Falco's character. I feel like Isayama is going to do something major with him. Like he's going to become a major player in all this. I love Falco's character. He's kind of like a mixture of Eren and Armin. He has Eren's like precociousness and tenacity, but he has Armin's compassion. And so he's a really cool mixture of them. Whereas Gabby seems to get more of Eren's like wild feral traits, Falco has more of like a center to him, a focus. And so I really don't want Falco's hope and compassion to be diminished. I don't want this series to do that to him, because like when he showed compassion towards the guy from Fort Salva or Slava, I was like, I don't want his passion to go away. And I'm fearful that this world's going to make him a hollow shell like Eren. And I'm like, no, Falco, I don't want that. So I'm curious, but God, I kind of love season 1 already, and we're only 1 episode in. So Isayama bringing out the big guns for season 4. I'm here for it, y'all. I'm here for it. But yeah, so that's the framework, the whole compassion and kindness and dignity framework is what I'm going to use for the recap. I'm super excited about it. But yeah, Midnight Train. Oh, here we go, y'all. I'm so hyped. So I've wasted enough time. Let's dive into this, shall we? And so we are going to start episode 2 of season 4, Attack on Titan. No spoilers, y'all, but we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. Isayama, I love you. Holy shit, this episode. What is this season? What is this season? I don't even know. I had to go make myself a cup of tea, drag Whiteboard Kun out, and be like, it's time, because this episode, holy cow. This episode, there is some weird, funky stuff being set up, right? We're only episode 2 into this. I feel like this is only episode 2, and I feel like we're like 12 episodes into a season already. It's like stuff is going down that in prior seasons would be going down like kind of like the halfway point, and there'd be like a setup. No, Isayama's like, setup is over. Prologue is over. It is time for the main event. And I'm like, okay, sure beans. But yeah, oh my God. There's so much being set up here, and there's something behind the scenes happening. There are things happening behind the scenes, and I feel like we're going to get that reveal of what it is soon, But when I saw the title of this episode was Midnight Train, and we saw the train scene with Reiner and Grice. I've been saying the name wrong. It's not Grease. It's Grice. Grice. And when I went back for a second, I was like, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Grice. Falco and Colt are related to Grice. That was with the Restorationists. Because of course they are, right? Mm-hmm. Same name. There's so much happening behind the scenes. And people's agendas are starting to come into the framework. And I'm like, it's all becoming very elaborate. And I love it. But we need... Whiteberg who needs to help me break it down, because there was there's so much exposition in this. It's like, here's all the Marleyan stuff you've been wanting to see. The Warhammer! The Warhammer is the 9th one. And it's all coming together. It's all coming together. So yeah, so I had to get a cup of tea and prepare for the brain. Not the brain melt, like the brain, like my third eye has opened. And it's like, it's time. I'm going to quit sipping that for now. Okay, so I wanted to bring up, this was part of the discussion today in that in-service that I went to. And it was talking about, one of the highlights he was talking about was the rupture of intersecting cultures. And he was talking a lot about colonialism, and I was like, okay. And what he was talking about was that when you have two cultures that are vastly different come together and collide, what typically happens is that people either build forts or build relationships. And I'm not joking. He literally said, he's like, well, forts, or they sometimes build walls. And I was like, ah! And that was the point where I decided that I needed to start writing down notes, because I was like, this is Attack on Titan. But he was talking about that, how when we have two cultures that are different, and when we meet someone different from ourselves, we either build a relationship with them through dialogue and communication, or we build a fort or a wall and we close them off from us, and we don't want to relate to them. And I was like, oh, wow. And so that tied into so many things. Like this conversation with Reiner and his family, he's built a wall, essentially, between him and the Survey Corps that he knew, to distance himself, to keep himself from building that relationship, right? And oh my God, there's so much that all makes sense now. Reiner, Isayama, when did you decide that Reiner was not only going to become a main character in all of this, but a highly complex, relatable, sympathetic character that I'm like, oh, I see the sympathy for Reiner now. Because way back in season 1, I was like, man, we don't get a lot of Reiner in season 1, before I knew that he was even the Armored Titan or anything. And somebody commented, they're like, man, Reiner's one of my favorite characters. And I was like, Reiner isn't in this much. He's like, God, he may be becoming one of my favorite characters because of just how complex he is and complicated and nuanced and, oh, buddy, okay, yeah. But anyway, we build forts and we build relationships. And so I've been mulling that over today, and I've come to the conclusion, and I talked about this in the recap, but I've refined it a little bit. But there's really only 3 end-all, be-all scenarios of this story. There are 3 end games. It's like the good, the bad. It's like the good ending, the okay ending, and the worst ending, right? It's like when you play a video game, there's either the good ending, the bad ending, or in this case, there's 2 bad endings and 1 good ending, right? So either in game of this series, one of 3 things has to happen, right? For this all to stop. If Eren wants this nightmare to end, if the Eldians want this nightmare to end, one of 3 things has to happen. Either 1, all the Eldians die, and then we assume the Titan shifter powers will be no more. The Titans will be no more. We don't know if that's true, but that's the theory, right? That as long as there's an Eldian alive, the Titan shifter powers will keep going. So you either kill the Eldians, the rest of the world dies, and there's just Eldians left. There's that option. Or you create a dialogue and a relationship. Obviously, we want the third option. But honestly, in the talk today that the guy was talking about, he related a lot to World War II. And then the United Nations and the talks afterwards, once World War II had ended, like the 1948 Human Rights Charter, and I'll bring that up in the recap. But anyway, he was talking about how these countries that had been at war with each other, once the war had somewhat settled, they decided that, yeah, they had to build a relationship. Otherwise, the war is going to keep going, right? So I found that so fascinating, and I'm like, no, really, honestly, that's the solution we got to get to. But as he noted in his presentation today, and I was sitting there like underlining it several times, that's not easy. building a dialogue in a relationship isn't easy. It's complicated. It's hard. It takes time. And it relies on dignity, respect, trust, and safety. And those are things I'm going to talk about in the recap. But I'm building my thesis around it. But yeah, but the idea is that right now, there is not trust or a feeling of safety with the Eldians. It's very much, he commented that there was the two brothers. The idea is that there's two brothers, right? Is what he called them. And the two brothers are doubt and fear. And I was like, oh, instantly, like, yeah, doubt and fear are the two brothers. That you doubt that you can trust someone, or you doubt that they're going to be able to keep you safe. And then it becomes a fear that they're going to turn their back on you, or fear that they're going to cause you harm. And it's all tied together. And I was like, oh my God, that's pretty much what's happening right now. It's kind of insane. But yeah, this whole episode felt like a setup. But it was probably the best setup episode of any piece of media I may have watched in recent memory. Because I was like, it was engaging. There was revelations. The cart titan's a woman. Of course it is. I said last reaction, I'm like, I wonder if the cart titan will be really pretty, like really handsome. She's really pretty. And I love the concept that she's been the cart titan for 2 months straight. So that's interesting. Like, she can hold that form for 2 months without exerting a lot of energy. But I guess if you're just walking around and you're not really attacking anything. But she'd walked around in that form so much that she forgot how to walk on 2 legs. I'm like, that's interesting. And then later on in the couch, she's just lying on the couch like on all fours because that's what she's used to. I'm like, interesting. And her and Galliard, I was not expecting for Galliard to be Marcel's brother. Did not expect that. I was like, okay, cool. But I also in my head thought of Galliard. He has the beard and everything, which is not like his character at all. But I didn't expect Galliard to be as coarse as he was. I expected him to be more jovial and like a jokey character. And he doesn't like Reiner at all. I'm like, oh wow. So I'm like, they're not BFFs. No, Galliard's pretty much a prick. I'm like, cool. And he's speaking of prick, he's with Peak. I'm like, oh man, finally getting a ship and Attack on Titan that might be canon. And it's these two Titan Shifters, so But yeah, we need to talk about this episode. But I'm so floored. Like, things are happening behind the scenes, and I want to go back and pause in certain places because I have theories about our Levi Squad infiltrating. I'm like, please. But something's up with Zeke. Stuff's up with Reiner. Stuff is happening. There's stuff being set up, and I'm like, oh, and the whole thing with Falco Grice, and Colt Grice. Wow, what a God! The web, Isayama, that you weave. You're just playing us at this point, just playing us. But we need to step into this madness, and I'm gonna turn the sound down as we go through this. But okay, so I found it curious that the guys are all meeting in this shabby, it looks like the wreckage of, they have a boardroom, and I don't know if it seems like they hadn't taken the train back to their hometown yet, to Liberio. So I feel like, which is like Liberty, Liberio, maybe that's the connection to it. Okay. But I feel like this was at near where the war was happening at. So it's like the shambles, the wreckage remaining from their battle that they had at Fort Slava. Our 2 main battle titans were nearly shredded by the enemy fleet. And they've got like the cups of coffee and the armor and then the newspapers and everything. Human ingenuity surpasses and shatters Marley's armor at last. What a headline. Like, the reporter that wrote that headline, they deserve a raise. It's a pretty damn good headline. And so we have this man in the shadows. The press from the other nations is commending the Mideast forces. This guy that's got all the battalions, like all the things. The general here of Marley's fleet and forces. So interesting. But yeah, so basically the age of the Titans is coming to an end. And we're going to talk about this. The politics side of the show really fascinates me. And we're definitely getting into it with this. So I'm very curious to go back through this dialogue. But yeah, the guy's like, does this sound like a Marleyan victory? Like, we nearly didn't win. We almost had our 2 Titans taken out. 2 of our Titans taken out. Does this seem like a victory? Because, yeah, they're really down to only 5 Titans at this point. They've got the Armored Titan. They have the Warhammer. I love that name. The Warhammer. We'll talk about the Warhammer. And then the Cart Titan, the Jaw Titan, and the Beast Titan. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the others. 2 of them are combined, and then the other 2 are with them. And so they asked Magath to comment, and Magath, oh my god, his like eyes are him and the guy next to him that's bald. The bald guy at some points reminded me of Keith, but the Magath guy, his eyes remind me of Keith. Like just that sunken in, dead eyes. Like they've just seen so much battle and like defeat and destruction that they're just like dead, soulless shark eyes. Mm-hmm. And I'm impressed that Zeke is on the council and Colt is standing behind them. Humanity has eclipsed the power of the Titans. Mm-hmm. And and I like this. Okay, so the idea, and I like that in this war room that they're meeting, like the windows are shattered out, the roof is gone, it's very bare bones, and it's kind of like, it's very similar to the council of Eldia, right? The council inside the walls. It's very similar. It's like, yep, okay, here we go. So, okay, so the idea of Marley here, and the idea with Marley is that they have been relying on Titans and colonial expansion. So we talked about this in the last reaction, but this pretty much confirms it, that they have been relying on keeping the Titan power and expanding their land. That's been the two main things that they've focused on throughout, the last several years. And then Magath is saying other nations, the rest of the world, meanwhile, has been working on weapons to fight the Titans. Because, the Titans are pretty much what separates them from the rest of the world. The Titans are their weapons. So without that, they're not going to be able to defend themselves. So it makes sense. If you've got something that's trying to destroy you, by all means, do what you can to prevent it. Our strategy has come back to bite us on the ass. Mm-hmm. And for the time being, our Titans remain unrivaled when it comes to land battles. But if an aircraft keeps advancing at this rate, bombs will soon fall like rain. Yeah, so here's the problem. We talked about this in the last reaction. They've been focusing so much on the Titans. Their naval and air force isn't really special. It's not, they got Zeppelins. They don't have planes. And this guy's talking about technology advancing where they're going to have aircrafts and other things to combat them that can knock a Zeppelin out of the sky pretty darn easily, right? So Titans are going to be the superior on land. And they make a reference to the devil of all earth in this. Yeah, superior on earth/land. But they can't fly. They can't swim, apparently. The earth and land's pretty much it. Okay? Which is fascinating. And I love the visual of when they look at the birds up in the air, like the shadows of the birds flying over them. All the while, the devils of the earth can do nothing but look up and watch. Mm-hmm. And then there's the which is funny going to the OP because the OP shows a lot of birds as well, right? There's a lot of flying imagery in this. And so then the commander guy, he says, do we not have any Titans with wings? I'm like, dude, you are the commander of this army. Why are you asking that? So there's no flying Titans. No Titans with wings. None that we know of. So I'm guessing the Warhammer does not have wings either. Yeah, it just, I'm like, what do you think? How do you think you're going to do that? And then, Magath's like, I'm trying to say that the era of Titans. So Magath is trying to say that we need to focus on other things besides just the Titans. Which is funny because in the last episode, Magath was telling the kids that Marley's whole claim to fame is the power of the Titans. But Magath is like, the era of the Titans is coming to an end, right? Magath is seeing the writing on the wall that the rest of the world has gotten fed up with them. And they're like, well, fine, then we'll just kill all the Eldians and beat y'all to it. And then Marley won't be, Marley's whole thing is at this point, they are reliant on the Titans so heavily that if they get rid of the Titans, they're screwed. Marley has nothing. And so the rest of the world's realizing that. And they're like, if we just get rid of the Titans, then we can take Marley. And they won't be a superpower anymore. Easy peasy. And so then, and then the general's like, I know, in the near future, we will lose our initiative in war. So, I mean, maybe we already have. So the generals, they're all seeing the writing on the wall that the Titans are maybe not going to be the end-all be-all. Though once the heroes who crushed the Eldian devils, look at what we've become. Yeah, so that's interesting. Once the heroes who crushed the Eldian devils, because if you think about it, Eldia was an empire, right? So you had Eldia that the world hated because it was an empire, and then Marley were the heroes that were the new victors. But now Marley has exploited and basically become what Eldia was. And so now the world doesn't view them as the hero anymore. They view them as exactly the opposite. So again, it's just a big cycle. It's a generational thing, and it's true to real life. You know, the victors of one war may end up being the losers in another. And the people that were once thought of as being heroes will maybe be seen as villains by the rest of the world later on. So it's all in flux, right? And then Zeke asks if he can speak, requesting permission to give counsel. Zeke the Wonder Boy. Go ahead. The Wonder Boy, Zeke. So, yeah, he's the prodigy, right? And God, the irony is just, Zeke has no clue he's royalty. Or does he? I don't think he does. But maybe he does. But Zeke is questionable when you talk about Zeke. I'm going to make a web here of characters and kind of talking about the web of characters and what we've got going on with each of them. We'll start with Zeke. So I like that he's the Wonder Boy. Makes me think of Hercules, Wonder Boy. Makes me think of that. So Zeke gives counsel in this moment. He says, we should resume the operation to get Parody Island and recover the Founding Titan. Zeke is pretty adamant about this. And the other generals are like, why are we going back to this random island? And he's like, as Commander McGath was saying, Marley needs to develop better weapons, meaning we need resources, right? So if we go back to Parody, the world's not going to stand by and wait on us to do so. And the commander's like, okay. He's like, our military needs time to completely restructure. So, but before that, the newspapers of the world must read this, that Marley occupies Parody and wields the power of all Titans. So that's a very, very, very good idea on Zeke's part. Zeke has thought this out. This is actually really clever because, Zeke is saying our people in Marley need time to create weapons that are just as good as the rest of the world. But if we seem weak and we seem vulnerable, then we won't have time to do that. The world's not going to wait on us to develop new weapons. They're going to attack us while we're down. But if we invade Parody and get the power of the Founding Titan, and we have the power of the Titans, it sounds like the rest of the world is afraid of Parody. The rest of the world probably takes that threat seriously, that there's the millions of Titans surrounding Parody, and if you come bother us, we'll destroy the world. So everybody else is leaving Parody alone. They're like, oh, Parody's off on their own little island. Let's just leave them alone and not worry about them. They're not bothering us. We're not going to bother them, sort of thing. And Zeke's like, okay, well, we go take Parody, and if we obtain the Founding Titan and we have all the Titans back, because he's thinking if we get the Founding Titan, we're also going to get the Colossal Titan, we're also going to get the Female Titan, and we're going to get, assuming the Attack Titan, except he doesn't realize that the Attack and Founding is together. So, and it's funny though, they don't really mention the Attack Titan. They don't. They don't mention the Attack Titan. They mention the Founding Titan. They mention the Founding Titan, and they mention the Colossal and the Female Titan, but they don't really, I don't think at any point in this series, Zeke or Reiner or anybody has mentioned the Attack Titan. So either they think that the Attack Titan is someone else, or they know that Eren has it, or they're not even referencing it. Curious. But Zeke's really smart in this moment. He's like, okay, if we take back Parody and we take the Founding Titan, we'll gain all the other Titans back. Then Marley will have all the Titans, and we can buy ourselves some time by saying, look, guys, now Marley possesses the power of all Titans. Don't mess with us, or we're going to unleash hell on you. It's really genius. It's really brilliant on Zeke's part, Wonder Boy, because it's like, yeah, that would work. That would shut people up for a while, because if they're scared, if they have fear, they're not going to do anything. If they're fearful that Marley might attack them, especially with the power of the Founding Titan, then yeah, that's going to buy you some time. Or even if you don't get the Founding Titan, just saying that you took over Parody is going to at least buy you a bluff, right? And the commander seems to think that that's that's a he doesn't acknowledge that Zeke's idea is good, but you can tell he's thinking about it like, that could work. And then you have 1 year left in your term. I like that they refer to it as a term. They call them terms. That's just, it's very, very militaristic. Like, you've got 1 year left of your term, right? Yeah. And so Zeke has 1 year left. So Zeke's been the Beast Titan for 12 years. So Zeke is on his 12th year right now. And if he was around, okay, so 4 years ago at Shiganshina, or technically 5, right? Technically 4 to 5 years ago, he was 25. And that had been, so that would have gave him like what, 7 years before then? Or 6 years before then, let's say 6. So he would have been 19 when he became, so he possibly became, he was 19 when he became the Beast Titan. Does that sound right? Maybe? 19-ish when he became the Beast Titan? The same age as Grisha? The same age as Grisha no, Grisha was 25 when he became the Attack Titan. So, but he was the same age as Grisha when he was born. Zeke was born when Grisha was 19. And so when Zeke was 19, instead of having a kid, he became the Beast Titan. Fun times. The Beast Titan was born, right? Interesting. So he has 1 year left. Okay. And that's why they're training Colt to take his place. Yes, and I'm concerned that Colt can't inherit the full power of the Beast Titan. So he's concerned that the full power won't transfer. Which I'm curious what his reasoning is, because he doesn't, according to him telling Colt, he doesn't think he's royal blood, or he's not letting on that he's royal blood. So what is his excuse to the Marleyan government that he doesn't think Colt will inherit the full power? Why is that? Because even Colt kind of reacts in that moment to his statement. He's kind of like, what? I guess he's saying that he doesn't think Colt is good enough or doesn't have all the special requirements. Interesting. And so the commander hears him out. He says, in your last year, you wish to redeem yourself for your defeat 4 years ago. And Zeke is like, that is correct. The sick exploits of Grisha Jaeger should be brought to an end. God, and as he says that, he has Grisha's eyes. Oh, man. And the glasses? By none other than me, his former son. So yeah, so he is the former son. Does not acknowledge Grisha as his father. Fun times. It's going to be great if he sees Eren again. But yeah, so Zeke's character gets more and more interesting all the time. And there'll be a scene with him and Colt later that I want to talk about. But God, this opening. I love this OP. I absolutely love it. Like I said before, it's a very different OP. It doesn't sound like the war song that the first couple of seasons were. It's not patriotic at all. It's warped and distorted. And it has like the children's chorus, like the ED of season 2. And I love it. It's just a really good OP. It's different than anything Attack on Titans had, but this season is kind of unlike any other season of Attack on Titans, so it's a perfect choice, right? It's really, really good. But yeah, all right. So let's get past this OP. It's a pretty long OP too. It's like 2 minutes. So yeah, Midnight Train. I really thought when we got this title that we'd be on a train for most of the episode, but we were really not. But the heart of this entire episode, the heart of it, has to do with the train itself and the conversation that Falco and Reiner have on the train. That's the whole big conversation here. I also love the imagery of the cigarette being lit up. That Zeke lighting the cigarette. Zeke, you got a smoking problem, but I guess if you got 1 year left to live, you're not concerned about it, right? And so then, yeah, I keep wanting to call Zeke Grisha, right? Because Zeke reminds me a lot of Grisha in this episode. A lot. It's ironic because Zeke doesn't even realize it. And he says to Colt, I'm sorry I bashed you to further my agenda. Yeah, everybody in this episode has an agenda. That's the thing. Everybody in this episode has an agenda. The Marleyans, their agenda is just looking out for Marley. They don't care about the Eldians. They don't care about the Titans' well-being. Magath is saying the Titans, we might as well just kill all the Titans now and just focus on our own people and our own weapons. That sounds like what Magath wants, because he was trying to tell the commander that the Titans' era is ending. But the Marleyans at the end of the day only care about themselves. That's their agenda. And if the Eldians killing themselves and sending people over to Parody and destroying everything gets them to that agenda, that's all they care about. Zeke has his own agenda though. And we're going to talk about all this. So yeah. And then Colt's trying to talk up Zeke. He's like, to think an Eldian being heard by the general. Because, yeah, that, from what we've seen with Eldia and Marley so far, the fact that Zeke is not only on the council, but that he's allowed a seat at the table with the other Marleyan generals, and the fact that he's allowed a seat with them, and he's allowed conversation with them, it's fascinating, right? It's fascinating. So, very curious. I still think back to Zeke telling Aaron that he'd save him. And knowing what we know about Marley now, that makes me so curious as to what his definition of save was going to be and what he wanted to do with Aaron. I'm so fascinated. But yeah, I love the idea of this ship sinking and them just standing on the ship edge, just like talking with one another. And Colt saying there hasn't been a beast titan like you in its history. And Zeke's like, yeah, okay. And then, irony of all ironies, sometimes it reminds me of the founding titan. Ha ha ha! Funny that, Colt. What you don't realize is that it reminds you of the founding titan because he's related. He's the descendant of the founding titan. Fun times. But why are you so special? It's not like you have any royal blood. Uh-huh. And he's like, who knows? I guess I'll be dead before we figure it out. No, so does Zeke know his royalty? Does Zeke know? I'm going to put a little crown. That's the question. I don't think Zeke knows he's royalty. The question is, does anyone else in the Marleyan government know that he's royalty? Yeah, why is he so special? I mean, and that whole idea of him being special has kind of like followed Zeke around since childhood. It's ironic that his father called him special and Zeke hated it. He hated all the pressure his father put on him and tried to push his beliefs onto him. He resented his father for it and betrayed his father because of it. But then the Marleyan government comes around, calls him Wonder Boy, and treats him special too. So it's like, it's sort of like, like I said in season 3, Oedipus, because Oedipus is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Zeke's whole life is kind of that. He can't escape being special and he can't escape fate, which is curious because he's royalty. So I guess that ties back around to the idea of not being able to escape who you are. Like, Zeke can try to say he's not special and he can try to act like anyone else, but he's royal blood. He is special. He was born, right? So it's curious. He says, I guess I'll be dead before we figure it out. And then he says, oh, but when you inherit my memories, you'll find out my big secret. So they all know, all the Titan Shifters know about inheriting the memories of each other, which is going to come up later on. And that's very, very interesting. When you inherit my memories, you'll find out my big secret. So Zeke has inherited the memories of the previous Beast Titan. Interesting. And Reiner's inherited the memories of the previous Armor Titan, and so on and so forth. Interesting. So the thing is, Zeke is so hard to read that I'm like, does he really have a big secret? Does he have a secret to share with Colt? Or was that a joke? Right? That's the interesting part, right? He's like, you'll find out my big secret. And that's when Colt is like, wait, what secret? What is it? And then he says, a special way I wipe my ass. I hope you don't tell anyone. But here's the thing. Did he really have a secret to tell Colt, but he knew Magath was coming and he stopped saying anything about it? Or was he just joking? This episode is making you question everything. It's making me question like motivations of characters. And in this episode, characters say something, but mean something quite different, right? They say something, but they mean something different. And that happens several times in this episode. And this is the first time. So in this instance, Zeke is like, oh, I was just joking. I'm talking about wiping my ass. And I'm like, were you? Were you, Zeke? I don't think you were. But then Magath wants a report. Yeah, so Magath shows up, right? And then, yeah, they both come to attention to say about Commander. He's like, everything down to the hairs on your ass. Do you think you Eldians get privacy? And they're like, no, sir, we don't get privacy. And then I love this. The symbolism of this moment is so definitive of the Marley and Eldian relationship. Magath holds the cigarette and Zeke lights it for him. Zeke strikes the match and lights it for him. I'm like, it's that servitude, it's that obedience. It's such a representation of the control that Magath has in that moment. Mm-hmm. And Magath's like, do you really think you can conquer parity in a year? And Zeke's like, well, it's really more like I only have a year left to try. I don't really have any other options at this point. And then, yeah, Magath says in these past 3 years, every scout ship we've sent to parity hasn't returned. Gee willikers! Imagine that! So, you have in the past 3 years, so basically a year passed after Reiner and Zeke went back to Marley. A year went by, and then they started sending scout ships. And they had 32 that they sent over. So doing the math, let me grab my old happy calculator here and see what we do here. So doing the math, if you have 3 years, so you have 52 weeks times 3, so you have 156 weeks. So basically every 4 weeks, every month, basically, for every month to a half, they were sending a scout ship, and it didn't come back. So that's interesting. That would explain why, that would give reason of how the Survey Corps could have gotten over to Marley. They could have taken one of the scout ships that they infiltrated and drove it back to Marley. That's how they could have got in, right? That makes sense. Every scout ship that we've sent to parity hasn't returned. What do you think of that, Zeke? And Zeke's like, well, considering that 32 ships were sunk, I can't imagine a single Titan was responsible. So in that year's time, we can imagine that maybe Armin got used to being the Colossal Titan and developed his power and was able to transform into the Colossal Titan to sink the ship. I mean, once a month, if Armin only used his power as the Colossal Titan once a month, that'd be kind of feasible. And we saw back in episode 20 of season 3, we saw on that day that we had Kruger change into the attack Titan and he just crushed a ship by himself. I mean, the thing of it is, has Zeke seen Aaron's Titan form? I guess Reiner has, so it doesn't matter. But, I mean, Aaron by himself, if they were sending one scout ship, Aaron could crush that pretty easily. So, yeah, if 32 ships were sunk, I can't imagine a single Titan was responsible. It could have been. Aaron could have crushed a ship like that. Armin could have crushed a ship like that. And we don't know what's happened with Annie, so, okay. Yeah, at least 2 Titans, including Eren Yeager, must have blocked their escape. So, if he's suggesting that, then it's probably that Eren was on one side and Armin was on the other side to block the ship. And then they just infiltrated the ship and just came back around and just, took the people prisoner. And that's the other thing. They could have taken... We've seen in prior episodes the torture methods that Hanji and Levi have done with Sanus. So they could have easily taken the ship over, taken the people on board hostage. They could have tortured them. They could have pried them for information and said, tell us all you know. And maybe that's how they started learning about Marley and how to infiltrate. And they could have taken the papers. They could have taken the permits from the people from the ships that they kidnapped. They could have done that. That's how they could have gotten back in with the permits. It's all making sense now how they could have gotten in. Yep. So, anyway, Magath says, I agree. If we attack the island, our ships will need support. Right, meaning that they're going to need Titans to go with them. And then Zeke says, but it's more than their Titans that pose a threat. And I love this. So, yeah, Zeke is remembering Levi, right? And this transition. So again, the Titan Shifters, there's 9 of them. Are they all somewhat connected, perhaps? Maybe? Or are Zeke and Reiner connected because they both fought Ackermans? Maybe? So you have Zeke remembering old Levi. I'm going to draw an arrow. Feels appropriate. So yeah, Zeke's like, Titans aren't the only problematic element that they have. They have Levi too. So you have Levi over here in his memories. And God, yeah, because I didn't think Levi would do what he did against the Beast Titan. And then it cuts from, what a smooth, that transition's so smooth. It cuts from Levi going to the Beast Titan to Mikasa coming at Reiner, right? So you have this moment here. And we're going to draw a big old thing over here to Reiner. Reiner's getting his own big old web over here. Because there's a lot with Reiner in this episode. I may be in love with Reiner's character now. And I'm not just saying that because he had a glow up. I'm not just saying that. I feel awkward that he has had a glow up. I don't like it. But I'm saying because Reiner's character has become so complex. I'm like, Isayama. Okay, but yeah, it cuts to Reiner seeing Mikasa. And those eyes, man, Mikasa. And then he says, wait. He says, wait. He asks her not to attack him. That's the thing. That's the thing. So we're going to talk about this. Reiner is complicated. He's a complex character in all this. And I'm so fascinated by Reiner in this episode that I want to break him down. Like, I want to break down a lot about his character. But yeah, he says, wait. Yeah. And he reaches out to stop. And yeah, as he wakes up. And then, yeah, so then we have Galliard. It seems like you were having a good dream, so I didn't wake you up. Mm-hmm. And then Reiner tells him that he thanks him for all he did. And, yeah, Galliard's saying, don't thank me. If I inherited the Armor Titan 9 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. So, okay. I'm seeing there's a connection here, right? So, Reiner, we're going to make this connection down here. Because we have Galliard. We'll talk about Galliard. So, Galliard, we're going to tie another web here. Galliard, it sounds like what Reiner's suggesting to Falco on the train is that there's this parallel between what happened with Reiner and Galliard in the past and what's happening with Falco and Gabby now. So it sounds like Galliard was supposed to become the Armored Titan, but did not. Instead, it was Reiner, right? And Gabby is supposed to become the Armored Titan now, but Reiner is trying to get Falco to instead. And the funny thing in all this is that Marcel, who is Galliard's brother, is the one that died saving Reiner. Okay. So yeah, so Galliard seems a little bit peeved at the fact that he didn't get to become the Armored Titan 9 years ago. And he's a little bit arrogant in this. He's like, my brother wouldn't have protected you and been eaten by a Titan either. Yeah. And I feel bad for Reiner because I really thought going into this episode that him and Galliard were going to be chums. I thought him and Galliard from that battle were going to be like, thanks, friend. But no, Galliard really doesn't like Reiner. He seems almost like he's mad at Reiner because he's like, my brother died to save you and you couldn't even get the job done. And you lost Bertolt too and Annie too. It seems like from Reiner's flashback, which we'll get later, they were all childhood friends and Reiner was the only one that came back. And it's almost like, you know, the others are all lost at war and Reiner's the one that survived and Galliard's bitter about it. Galliard is mad that Reiner was the only one left. Reiner was the sole survivor. So that's interesting. That's very interesting. And so Reiner's like, you saw Marcel's memories. And he says, no, but I learned enough from the girl before me, Ymir. So that establishes something too. The idea that it only goes back maybe one generation. It only goes back to the generation before you. So it's established that maybe you only learn from the prior gen. Okay. That would make a lot more sense because I was like, is Aaron going to have like, because Eric, when Eric was doing the math, I mentioned him at the beginning of this reaction, when Aaron was doing the math, he was establishing that there had been 145 kings there have been 145 founding titans since the beginning, since Ymir split into the 9 Titan Shifters. There's been 145 different founding titans. And so that would be utter insanity if Eren inhabited and inherited the memories of 145 founding titans and potentially 145 attack titans. Like if he had 300 people inside of him and all those memories, like your brain would just be mush. So it makes sense that you only learn from the prior gen, right? So it would establish why Galliard's probably bitter about that too, because he's probably bitter that he doesn't get to inherit his brother's memories. He inherits Ymir's memories. He inherits memories from Ymir. So he's probably pissed about that too. He's like, well, not only did my brother die saving you, but now I don't get to get my brother's memories back. Instead, I get Ymir's. Who's this? And the way he describes her, at this point, I was not a fan of Galliard's character when he was talking about Ymir. He said, what an impressive woman what an impressive name for such a pitiful woman. And I hate that. So Ymir is officially dead in this episode. I didn't toast her in the recap because I was kind of like, I figured she died, but it hadn't been confirmed. And I was like, I didn't want to wait. I wanted to wait and see if it would be confirmed first. I was like, well, if anything, by the recap for season 4, part 1, I'll toast Ymir. But I was going to wait. And now it's officially confirmed. So it's like, okay. So I'll be able to toast her like officially. She's confirmed. But I hate that. I hate that Ymir looks so sad and pitiful. That she's just like, she's lost the love of her life. She lost Historia. She's going to just die, passing on this power to something else. Like Ymir's whole life was mainly just being used and living a lie. And in the final moments when she is finally honest with herself and she breaks free from her slavery and realizes she loves someone, she has it taken away. It's like, Isayama, why'd you do that? And then, yeah, a pitiful woman. And isn't it thanks to her that we got my brother's jaw back? So, and that's adding even more hurt to Reiner, because Reiner looks really sad there. I felt, going back and rewatching episode 22 of season 3, there's a moment where Reiner is watching Ymir write the letter. And I feel like Reiner had a lot of sympathy for Ymir because she, and this goes back to her talking about in season 2, episode 10, when she's like telling Reiner and Bertolt, she's like, she looks at me and smiles despite knowing what I am. She's like, she knows I'm the son of a devil and a Titan shifter and a monster, but she still loves me. And it's like, God. And so Reiner, you can tell, feels sympathy for Ymir and sympathy for her in that moment. And so he respected her that she had the dignity to come back and own up for her actions. It's like, damn. And so then it's almost like Galliard is like pouring salt into the wound of Reiner, saying, well, not only did you cause my brother, you caused the power of the Jaw Titan to go to someone else, but besides that, you wouldn't have even been able to bring it back if Ymir hadn't chose to come back herself. So Galliard's really just does not seem to like Reiner. He does not like Reiner, is the impression I'm getting. And Reiner, we have the feeling, is sympathetic towards Ymir, because he was trying all he could to get her letter back to Historia. Like the fact that he gave up that letter and he was willing to die keeping that letter safe, like that says a lot about his character. I feel that he above all wanted Ymir's wishes to be fulfilled. So I'm like, that gives Reiner that little dose of sympathy, and it's gonna get expanded upon later, that I'm like, okay, there's more to his character. There's so much more that I hadn't even considered in the past, but it's all coming to light now. And so then, yeah, Galliard says, what the hell were you doing on that island? And it's like, well, he says, getting saved by someone new every day. Yeah, because Reiner, who was Reiner saved by? Reiner was really only saved by Connie and Ymir. Were they the only two that saved him? So that's not entirely true. And I guess Bertolt saved him. But he says, yeah. And he says, I saw how you acted through her memories. What's with that? Pretending to be a reliable guy, huh? Damn. I'd say you were imitating my brother. And his eyes. Galliard has such fierce eyes. But yeah, so we're establishing that Reiner is trying to be reliable. Like Marcel. So Galliard's saying that Marcel was the reliable one. He's the one that died. So yeah, Marcel died saving Reiner. Connie risked his life to save Reiner. Bertolt saved Reiner. Annie, did Annie save Reiner? Maybe. And then Ymir saved Reiner. So yeah, a lot of people saved Reiner. It's kind of like, I talked about the Reiner and Eren parallels. They're there too. Yeah. But Galliard, he just really does not like Reiner. His eyes are so fierce. Okay, so his first name is Pock. Let's not pick on people who just took cannons to the face. So Pock Galliard. Pock. Okay. Pock and Marcel. Yeah, okay. And so in comes Peak with the crutch looking beautiful. Quit calling me that, Peak. So, okay, so is that a nickname maybe? And then Reiner asks if she's all right. So again, Reiner being compassionate. What the hell? Yeah, Reiner is compassionate. He asked Peak if she's okay, whereas Galliard just kind of slanders her. And she says, it's been 2 months since I've been a human. I had forgot the whole bipedal thing. So she's like needing to stand herself up to learn how to walk again. That's kind of insane, right? So, okay. Then we have Peak. Feel really bad that I was getting on to Peak earlier when Peak's been this pretty lady the whole time. She has just she has like a Mikasa look about her, like a really soft look. She has a very soft, like kind of hazy, like if Mikasa was like on Xanax, that's how I figure that's Peak. If Mikasa was like tripped out on Ambien, that would be Peak. Okay. By the way, Reiner, you ought to see Gabby and the others. They're worried about you. And at the time I was like, okay, and it makes sense now because Reiner's related to Gabby. And yeah, and here's the thing. Yeah, Peak like walks in. She's like, hey, Reiner, you need to go check on them kids. She just wanted to get Reiner out of the room, y'all. She just wanted to get Reiner away. Because, yeah, she says, I'm pooped. And it feels like ages since I've seen you. And she's like, really? Even though we're always fighting together? And he says, well, we might not have to for a while. Let's hope so. Peak and Galliard are a thing. I'm totally convinced. In a relationship with Galliard. I think they're doing it. I think they're in a relationship. Cart and Jaw. I think Cart and Jaw are totally in a relationship. And it kind of goes back to what Reiner said. He's like, we're murderers with a short time alive, so might as well make the most of it. She's like, well, if I'm going to be stuck being this quadruped, I might as well have fun while I'm doing it. Holy cow. So yeah, and I mean, she's so casual around him. I'm like, no. And she's always like sleeping. She's always like, ugh. But yeah, nah. They're totally doing it. I'm calling it now. I'm like, okay, fine, Isayama, you give us a cannon ship in the 12th hour. I'll take it. I'm taking whatever shipping crumbs I can get at this point, right? Galliard and Peak. Pock and Peak. Peak Pock. Peak Pocket. You know. But yeah, so she just wanted to get Galliard by himself. Interesting. So I'm assuming that they are not planning to go to Parody. I'm assuming that when he said we're not going to have to fight for a while, maybe either they're not planning to go to Parody or they don't even know the plans yet. They don't know the plan to go attack Parody yet. It's either one of the two. Either they don't know the plan to attack Parody or they are not going to be part of that plan to go over there. Interesting. Interesting indeed. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense why Peak and Galliard did not go to Wall Maria from the beginning. Because if you're thinking about it, a giant 60-meter wall, a giant 50-meter wall is there. What was Peak gonna do? She wasn't gonna be able to attack the wall except hop over it maybe. And Galliard and Marcel, I guess Marcel went along as the Jaw Titan to like scramble up and maybe claw through the wall or do something like that, right? maybe that was the case, but yeah, Peak wasn't going to do anything over there. They're just, to haul supplies and stuff. Interesting. So yeah, so we have all of our Marleyan guys there, and we see them taking a lady, like that one guy's taking a lady away, and he's Marleyan, and so then we have like, it's like they're in the port getting ready to go back from Slava, and like the Marley man's gonna run off with the Slava girl to have their way, And so they say if the Titans lose their usefulness in battle, what will happen to the warrior unit and us Eldians? So Udo asks that question, and I'm like, Udo, honey, you're going to get killed if that's the case. I mean, they bring up a good point, but if the Titans are no longer needed, Marley is not going to keep them alive because they have no use for them. They're wasting all their resources now, giving the Eldians like home and land and all this other resources. Once they realize they don't need them anymore and the Titans have no usefulness to Marley, they're just going to like commit a mass genocide, essentially. Right? And so we get our 4 kids here, and Falco says, a guy that lives near me says the sea's so salty because he pisses in it. And then, yeah, so Gabby this adds a whole nother layer to Gabby and them. A whole nother layer, right? Because we have Gabby. Gabby is Reiner's cousin, right? Because her dad was Reiner's uncle. So yeah, they're cousins. It makes so much sense now why Gabby is so amped on becoming the Armored Titan. She wants to be like her big cousin. She respects her big cousin Reiner and wants to be like him. Okay? And Reiner wants to keep her safe. And so, God, this is getting interesting. So yeah, they established that the Slaven, the enemy soldiers that survived the pure Titan attack, once they get home, they'll talk about how inhumane Titan warfare is. And it'll just make things worse for us Eldians. So yeah, the way they animate Udo in this is very interesting. He's very like almost jerky in his animation. I'm not sure what that is. It's very interesting. He says, let people of the world let us kill the subjects of Ymir. And then he gets mad. Udo has an anger issue. That's the thing. Udo has an anger problem, which is curious. And Zofia is really, really calm and collected. It's fascinating. But yeah, Udo has kind of like a thing. And then, yeah, Reiner says, don't beat up the city. And then, yeah, they all go to him. And you're okay to walk. I love all the kids. And this part right here, where Reiner, he like rubs their head and everything and says hello to them. Like Reiner being so soft, so freaking soft with these kids. I'm like, what the hell? What? Reiner just wanted to go back to his hometown. It makes sense why he wanted to go back to his hometown now. He wanted to see his family. He wanted to get back to his cousin because his cousin would have been like a little kid at the time. And I'm sure she was told about her big cousin Reiner being like the Titan Shifter and having all these powers and everything, like, and wanting to be like him. Like, Reiner being so soft with these kids is like the most wholesome thing I think I've seen in this show. And it's heartbreaking because you see Reiner cares about these kids an awful lot. Yeah, he cares about the kids. He cares about Gabby and the kids. Like, I wanted Reiner character development, but now, ugh. And then we're going back to Liberio. Yep. And let's walk around until then. So yeah, she's just dragging Reiner around. We never get chances like this. And then I like that Falco says, shouldn't Mr. Braun be resting? Like Falco's really, pragmatic. And then, yeah. And Reiner says, don't worry. And then Gabby's like having none of it. She's like, you go home and rest. And he's like, fine, no, I'm coming. And in this moment, it's not a place for kids. And in this moment, Reiner, like, oh my gosh, like the shadow comes over and Reiner has some severe trauma. Reiner has some severe trauma. Like I don't know if you want to call it PTSD, but he has some severe trauma that has affected his personality a lot, right? He has some severe trauma. And in this moment, when the shadow passes over them, he sees them all as kids, but he sees Annie and he sees Zofia like Annie. He sees Gabby like Marcel, right? He sees his cousin like Marcel. He sees little Bertolt and he sees Galliard as like Falco, right? And he sees the four of them, and they're all leaving, and Bertolt looks back to him, and Reiner says, wait. And this is the second time he said wait, right? And they all look back, and then he sees the sunlight. Oh, damn. I want to take a picture of that because it's so good. It's such a good shot. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. But that's the second time he said wait in this episode. He said the first time when Mikasa was trying to attack him, and he said the second time when the four others were leaving him, like leaving him behind. So we're getting like maybe in Reiner's past, he was afraid of getting left behind, so that's why he kind of shot against ahead of Galliard to become the Armored Titan. It's fascinating. And I feel bad for Reiner. I do. Because he only has a short amount of time left, and he's clearly traumatized. And he says, you kids are too young for that store. So I guess they were going to go somewhere that they weren't supposed to go to. He says, you kids are too young for that store. So, okay. And then we have, again, this episode is setting up people in the shadows, right? Again, I'm thinking it's a Survey Corps. It's a Levi Squad in the shadows, right? We're setting up like little chess pieces that are spying on Reiner, spying on him all around town, making their way downtown. And I'm pretty sure we saw Jean in the last episode at the very end getting the newspaper. We see somebody up here on the rooftop, and it's either one of two people. It's either Peak, which Isayama is a genius thing because Peak kind of looks like Mikasa. So from the back, you see the long black hair, and it's either Peak watching Reiner and the kids and thinking something's probably up with Reiner because why is he acting weird? Or if it's not Peak, it's Mikasa. It's one of those two looking down at him. One of those two. Yeah. Right? Interesting. Interesting indeed. One of those two. Did you guys witness the bravery of our Eldian goddess? So these guys in here, okay, I was going to comment on the one soldier's armband that was metal gray, but this one's gray too, right? This one's gray as well. Yeah, Gabby took on the armored train in place of 800 Eldian soldiers. So yeah, I love that Colt is drunk. Colt is drinking, and he's like putting Gabby up there being like, she's our hero, she saved the day. And Udo and Sophia are off to the side like, dude is drunk. Like, what the heck? Like, they just seem so like having none of it. And yeah, Gabby's like, you stink of booze. And he's like, why'd you do it, you big idiot? And she's like, and the other soldiers are like, what the hell? And they're like, do you have any idea why this idiot risked her life? And there's this one guy in the back that's like, I've never seen Colt drunk before. And then the one guy's like, oh, he's like, well, I do. She did it to save all your asses in the Eldian unit. Oh, Colt Grice. Okay, I wonder if there's any significance. It just, the bottle is interesting. He's like, she did it to save all your asses in the Eldian unit. Oh, and he's getting them all fired up. And then they all scream, yeah. So they're all like cheering Gabby on. And then we cut to the bourbon, like the bourbon in the decanter. Like the cheap booze is given to the Eldians, but the fancy stuff is left to the Marleyans. And Magath is like, and then somebody says, I'll go shut him up. And they're like, let him have it. So we have our Marleyan guys here. We have Zeke standing there, and then we have Peak and Galliard. Our OTP, not our OTP, but our only canon couple so far in this series that's alive. Oh my god, yeah, they're like, technically Peak and Galliard are like the only alive canon couple in this show, right? Isayama, why you do this? Okay. Alright, So yeah, we have Peak and Galliard, and we have Zeke sitting there, and we have the Marleyan troops and everything, and Magath saying, just this one night. Let them have it. Like, they won this. And yeah, Zeke and Galliard do not look happy of their cheering at all. And then Peak just kind of looks like, meh, I'm fine. She's like, I have no reason to complain. And so yeah. And of course, Gabby is like, I wonder if they gave Gabby a drink because her cheeks are all rosy and everything. And Colt's got her on his shoulders. They're all cheering. Zofia just looks like she could care less. Udo is like probably concerned that they're going to drop her. And then Reiner says they're lifting her up again. And he goes to the back of the cart with Falco. And I find it curious. At first, when I saw Reiner back here in the cart with them, I was like, why isn't Reiner up with Zeke and the other Titan Shifters? Why is he back in the back cart with Falco and them? But when you find out that Gabby's his cousin, it makes all the more sense that he wants to be with his family. And yeah, Falco's not happy about the whole drinking thing. He's like, they shouldn't let my brother drink. And Gabby gets carried away too easily. And that man, Reiner looks a lot like Colt and Falco. Now we know that they're not related, but he looks very similar to them. So, yeah, and Colt. So I'm going to put Colt and Falco over here. So they are the descendants of Grice. I keep calling him Grease, but it's Grice. They're Grice's either relatives or whatever, which is going to be so crazy when we talk about it. And then Reiner says it still looks like she'll be the one who inherits the armored Titan. Yeah, and he looks kind of proud about it at the moment. He looks proud of her that she's going to inherit it. He's like proud that she's getting it. But then Falco brings up some really hard truths. Falco says, yeah, the girl who adores you will inherit your Titan and will live till she's 27. God, Falco, this kid speaking some hard truths. Like, Falco is not happy that Gabby will die young, right? Falco's not happy about it. He's like, she's gonna die young. Like, she's gonna inherit, she adores you and she respects you and she like loves you, Reiner, and she's gonna inherit your memories and your power, and then she's gonna die when she's 27. And that gets Reiner's attention. And that, oh God, he was like, excuse me? Yeah. Because that one little line, if the cannons don't shred her first, that is. Because, yeah, and Falco and Reiner are thinking the same thing. Like, they're thinking, by the end of this scene, we figure out that Reiner is just as concerned about Gabby as Falco is. Falco's like, she's going to get killed. Like, this girl that has all this ambition and fire, the other side is developing weapons to fight her. Reiner nearly got shredded in this battle, and he's experienced. Falco's like, she's going to die. And he's like, are you fine with that? Yeah, and at this point, this is where Reiner gets in his face. What did you say? Yeah, because Falco's calling Reiner out. He's like, this is your flesh and blood. This is your relative. She looks up to you, and you're okay with her throwing her life away and dying? He's like, Falco's like, I care about her, so I'm clearly concerned. And Falco's establishing, what do you care about more, right? The cause or your family is what's coming down to in Falco's mind. That's pretty profound for a kid. And then Reiner's like, what did you say? Are you insulting the honor of inheriting one of the 9? And then, God, and poor Falco. He's like, if I report this, you and your whole family will become Titan weapons. Like Grice was before. He's like, if I report you, so if if you, I think Reiner's big thing was to scare Falco and be like, watch your mouth, don't say things. He's like, watch your mouth, because if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you're gonna die. Like, is what he's telling him, right? He's like, is that what you want, to be shipped off to paradise? And he's like, let me rephrase what I said. And Falco tries to cover up on it. He's like, Falco Grice, hope to be freed from the evil blood of Ymir and my ancestors. So, yeah, Reiner, when I said earlier that Reiner had drank the Kool-Aid, I really think that Reiner has had to buy in. He has had to buy in to the mission. Because he knows what's at risk. Reiner loves his family, and he knows that if he doesn't buy into the mission and act like the good little soldier, that his whole family will be put at risk. He's like, if they catch wind of anything else, we're dead. He's like, so I have to be the armored Titan. I have to go through with it because I have no choice. Otherwise, my family's dead. He's like, do you want that to happen to your family? So I see a lot of parallels in Falco and Reiner. There's a lot of parallels between Falco and Reiner. And Reiner hides his compassion, but he is a very compassionate person. whether he wants to admit it or not. And so this idea of pledging their lives to Marley to free them from the evil blood of their ancestors. So it's, yeah, the Marleyans have pretty much brainwashed all the Eldians in their servitude, that it's like, you serving us is freeing you from your sin. You're repaying your sins by serving us, is essentially the gist. But yeah, he's like, and what about the honor of inheriting one of the 9? Like, he's like, I would be proud to be an honorary Marleyan and be given the chance to display my loyalty to our motherland. So he's like, this is the highest honor. Are you saying it's not a good thing? And Falco, he lies. He has to lie to save face. And then Falco says, do you want to inherit? It's almost like Reiner is leading Falco to this. Reiner is wanting to lead Falco to the conclusion that Reiner's getting at about inheriting the Armored Titan. He's like, do you want to inherit the Armored Titan? And Falco responds with, and he stops. He's like, do you want to inherit the Armored Titan? And Gabby's like, thank you. And she's like cheering and about to cry. And Falco says, the one who should inherit it is me. And Reiner's like, yes. He's like, you have to rescue Gabby from the dark future that awaits us. Oh, man. Oh, that line, Midnight Train, that line, you have to rescue Gabby from the dark future that awaits us. So yeah, Reiner doesn't want Gabby to suffer. So the funny thing is, Reiner's willing to sacrifice Falco. He's like, Reiner has his own agenda. Reiner, and that explains why Reiner wanted it to end with him. He wanted it to end with him so that his cousin, so that the kids wouldn't be at risk of becoming Titan Shifters too. Reiner's like, this is hell, and I don't want anybody else to experience it, so it has to end with me. And so Reiner telling Falco this, he's like, you have to become the Armored Titan because we don't want Gabby to suffer. So Reiner has an agenda. He has reasons. Oh my gosh, this episode is so good, so good. But okay, so we had some information available for public disclosure. The Eldian armband. Okay, these armbands are used to differentiate the Eldian devils from the other races. Eldians of higher classes may have armbands with different colors. Okay, so there's a class system. Armband color can also vary depending on if the Eldian is in the military or a regular civilian. It is, oh God, go back. Lost there. Aha! What's happening? All right. I lost it for a second. Okay. It is mandatory for Eldians and Marley to wear their armband when they go outside. So we've seen red ones, and we've seen yellow ones, and we've seen silver ones. But it's funny because the red ones, Grisha's was red, but so was Zeke's. So it's like, if they're in the military or not, interesting. Don't spoil me, because maybe we'll get like a color system. Who knows? But it does vary. And we've seen silver, gold, and red so far. All right. And then the train comes in, and we got the Marleyans standing outside waiting on them. And so we have, and here's the thing, y'all. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. But if you look at Marley here, it's all this civilization. And where are the Eldians, per se? Why, they're within a wall. I'm looking at this town now, and there's a whole town, and then there's like, it's a setup of like a royal headquarters that looks very similar to Midras. And then there's a round, in the center of the city, there's a little round walled-in area that is where all the Eldians are. Imagine that. God, no wonder Reiner's sick of walls. No wonder. And here's the thing, the train pulled in, all the Marleyans were in the cars. The Eldians were in like the back cars like cattle. They were in the cattle cars. Because that's how the Marleyans view them. They're just cattle. They're just being used. God, that symbolism. And Gabby kicking her way out like a kung fu girl. And she's like, we made it back alive. Our beloved hometown, Liberio. So yeah, Reiner always wanted to go back to his hometown because his family's there. Yep.
And God, the look on his face when he sees her, he's like, we're home. And then Galliard is helping Colt, who clearly has a hangover, right? You should have known you can't handle your booze. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then Falco says, who's the one that gave him drinks? Uh-huh. And then Peak says it looks like he wanted some. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And then Zeke's like, how dare you spew Peak's kindness all over the train. So Peak is established as being kind. We can say this. She's kind of sneaky, but she seems kind. She seems like she's favored by the others. I like that she wears a slightly different outfit, and Galliard wears like a different outfit too. He's like more of a stocky guy. And then yeah, but they all think that Peak is kind. You should have shut him. We should have shut him up last night. Yeah, Magatha's regretting his decisions. # no regrets. And then Galliard's like, I keep hoisting you up because of Colt. And then Peak says, you deserved a bit of fun. What you did was impressive. So I do like that they kind of support her, but I'm assuming that both Galliard and Peak believe that she's going to inherit the Armored Titan. So they're trying to be friends with her because she's going to work with them eventually, right? And then Falco looking over Vice Chief Braun. So Zeke being established as the War Chief, right? War Chief Zeke. And then Reiner is the Vice Chief. It's funny that these two are the two main Titan Shifters, and yet they were the ones that started the whole war against Slava and the Mideast Allied forces to begin with. It's funny that. But yeah, it's almost like Galliard and Peak, they really don't care about Reiner. They really don't care about him. They know that Reiner's time is finite. We don't know when Peak and Galliard became their Titan Shifter forms, but we can assume they have more time on the clock than Reiner does and Zeke does. So they're making nice with Colt and Gabby because they know that soon they're going to be working with Colt and Gabby and that they need to treat teamwork makes the dream work. So they've kind of pushed Reiner off to the side. They're like, oh, you're old news. We're going to be friends with your cousin now and get her on board our train and Colt on board our train too. Interesting. And meanwhile, Falco, he sees Reiner staring off in the distance saying, Vice Chief Braun. What if he's thinking the same as me? What if he wants us Eldians to be free from war? So Falco has a goal. Falco has his own agenda. Falco wants them to be free of war. He wants the war to end. He doesn't want them to be at war anymore. And he's wondering if Reiner wants the same. And I think that Reiner does, but Reiner is so embedded in the system that he can't outwardly, he knows the risks of speaking that truth, of speaking what he really thinks. And so he can't do it right now. So it's fascinating, right? But yeah, do you think he wants to be free from war? And I like that he says, can I trust him? And God, the idea of trust, like he clearly respects Reiner and he clearly is wondering if him and Reiner are on the same page, but can I trust him? I want to say yes. At the end of the day, Falco could trust Reiner. But the problem is under what circumstance? Because I think if worse came to worse, would Reiner sell? It's a tricky situation because would Reiner sell Falco out? Would he give him away? Because I think Reiner's been put in a hard place because of Falco. Because on the one hand, I think Reiner would choose Gabby over him any day. And Reiner, I feel like Reiner would rat Falco out, but the only thing keeping him from doing so is he knows Falco is the closest chance of saving Gabby. Reiner wants to use Falco to save Gabby. He wants Falco to become the Armored Titan so that his cousin doesn't have to. That's what he wants, right? And thinking they can solve the problem and give Gabby a life. He's like, well, Falco, if you become the Armored Titan, maybe your generation and you all can stop this madness. And then Gabby won't have to live for only 13 more years. She can live a full life and grow old and maybe be at peace. So Reiner's wanting to give her a life that she doesn't necessarily realize that she wants. So the funny thing is, because Reiner is dependent upon Falco for that reason, I don't think he's going to rat Falco out. But I don't know if Falco can trust Reiner either. Even though it seems like Reiner has a similar agenda. It's complicated. But yeah, so then we have, I want to go back and see if I notice anybody in the crowd. Okay, so then we have everybody waiting at the gates, and they all have the yellow armbands on. I really thought Grisha's was red. Maybe it wasn't. I have to go back and look in the prior episode. But we have everybody standing there waiting for the gates to be open to see them all come back. And all the soldiers come back, right? And he says later, and Galliard tells Falco later, take it easy and enjoy the break. They're all going back to their families. And Falco's like, not me, I'm going back to training tomorrow. And she's like, what? Give me a break. And Gabby's like, give me a break, it's not going to help you. And those two arguing. And then Peak says, don't push yourselves too hard. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they all go back to their families. And it's so sad because it's just like this heartwarming, like these guys, all they wanted to do was go back home to their families and the people that they love. And it's like, can you blame them? Mm-hmm. So yeah, Udo goes back to his mom. And it looks like Zofia goes back to her mom. Right? And then Galliard goes back to his parents. Right? And then Peak goes back to her father. And her father coughs. So she looks like Peak looks like she's sad. Like that her father's not in good health. Right? And I wonder if that has something to do with Peak too. If Peak maybe is a little bit more frail. I wonder. And then, yeah, Magath. It's interesting Magath watching them, right? It's interesting Magath watching them in this moment. Like, he's watching them all reunite with their families. That's really interesting, right? And then he walks away. It's interesting because it's almost like Magath. It's curious because it's almost like Magath recognizes that they're all just people, too, right? But he can't. I don't know. It's interesting. Magath's character has been really unlikable so far in this season, but that one moment where he watches them all reunite with their families, I'm like, it makes me question Magath just the slightest bit. And so, yeah, Zeke goes back to his grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa. And it's like he's back with them. He says, I'm home. And they're like, you achieved great things, Zeke. Which is so crazy because that means that is... God, that's Aaron's grandparents too. That's Aaron's grandparents in that moment. That's so crazy, right? He says, no, not yet. I haven't achieved great things yet. It's like, oh my God. And then, yeah, Colt and Falco going back with them. And then we get Reiner's aunt and uncle, right? And here's the thing. So here's the thing. We see the aunt and uncle, and they look like Gabby, right? And then we see Reiner's mother. Okay, Reiner's mother and father, and it looks like her sister. And then this kid that is with the family looks like frickin' Marco. Looks like Marco, looks like Ymir. So, I'm wondering, he has family that looks like Marco and Ymir. With the dark hair and the freckles. And so... that's another aspect of this, right? Like Reiner's whole persona and personality, Reiner slipped into this dual personality when Marco died, right? And Bertolt noticed that. But this one kid that's related to them, like his cousin or brother or whatever, looks like Marco. So that makes me think that Reiner's whole personality and that whole moment of slipping into the soldier persona when he saw Marco getting eaten was like a response because Marco reminded him of his family. And he was like, he just freaked out and had this trauma. You know, that's just all I could think of in that moment. I'm like, God, he looks like Marco. I'm like, Isayama, you won't let him rest in peace. Even when he's being, even his doppelganger is coming up in this. It's like, come on. And then, what does she say? The mom says, you must be tired. Come home and rest. And he's like, Mom, I think I will. And Reiner just looks so like sincere. Reiner looks so delicate in that moment. It's crazy. So then, yeah, Colt's getting hauled off by his parents. His dad looks like, oh God, my son's drunk again. And the mom's like, oh my God. And then Falco tells him to go on ahead. And this is interesting. This whole scene is fascinating. And I want to talk about it because Falco comes over to these troops, right? And this one troop's freaking out. And they're like, for crying out loud, don't you know how to stand? Are they injured? Mr. Coslow. So Mr. Coslow is Marleyan. He does not have the band on. Are they injured soldiers? And he says, stay out of the way, brat. They're Eldians with emotional trauma. And so then we have this guy with long hair. We have these other guys with bandages. And this one guy, it's like it's from digging trenches on the front lines too long. And all these bullets and bombs do it to you. And yeah, they're shell shocked. They have PTSD. Like they're having this trauma from being in the trenches and listening to all the bullets and everything. And then the Marleyan guy, because he's just so mean and cruel, he does the whole boom sound and he freaks them out. And except for the one guy falls over, but he isn't affected by the whole sounds and everything, right? Interesting. And then, yeah, he isn't affected by it. And so then Falco looks kind of freaked out that the Marleyans laugh at them. And he says, look, they fell over again. And because Falco is compassionate, right? Because Falco is compassionate, he says, it's all right. And he tries to help him. He's like, are you okay? And then there's the one guy with the crutch. And he doesn't have a leg. Okay. So the one guy doesn't have a leg. And he says, your armband's on the wrong arm. Say what? That's what threw me off, right? Because the armband has always been on, it's been on this arm, right? It's been on the right arm. And no, it's been on the left arm the whole time. And he says, your armband's on the wrong arm. And the guy's missing a leg. Okay. All right. He says, it's okay. I'm sure you'll get better. You don't have to fight anymore. Huh. And then it's curious. Yeah, the guy with the one leg. It felt weird. It felt like we focused on him and it was weird. I don't know how to feel about it, but there's just something odd about that scene that it stands out that the armband's on the wrong arm. Okay. So we go to the family scene. I'm guessing that maybe, I don't think either of these men are Reiner's father. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just his mother. I think it's just Reiner's mother and him, because on either side, there's two men, two wives, and Gabby, and then the kid that looks like Marco. And then there's the mom and Reiner on either side of the table. So Reiner's father is not in the picture. It doesn't look like it. And she says, just like I planned, I blew the armored titan right off the tracks. And Gabby said, it actually worked, but I ran away. They fired a machine gun at me. And she's telling this like horrifying story, but her family are just like, everything is great. Galliard protected me with the jaw titan. And they're like, oh, amazing, Gabby. Isn't that great? You and your bravery saved a bunch of our soldiers. You're the savior of Eldia. Yeah. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. And then, yeah, so it's kind of messed up and twisted that she's talking about like this near-death scenario that Gabby's talking about. Like, I nearly died, but here's all the things that I did. And the family's like, yay! And I'm sure that the twisted thing is that for them, they have to keep her spirits up because her being a Marleyan warrior is the only way that they get basic human rights. So they're like, we've got to keep your spirits up that you're going to become the armored titan. Okay, you know? And I'm going to shift this over because we have things to talk about in this dinner scene. I'm going to climb this on over. Oh, sorry, buddy. Sorry. And then, yeah. So, yeah, we need to talk about this dinner scene. The mom asks Reiner, do you think Gabby will become a warrior? And I love that it's raining outside. And Reiner's like, yes, it's almost a given she'll inherit the armored titan. Yeah. And she's like, that's good to hear. To think our family would have two warriors, I'm so proud. If only those island devils disappeared, we Eldians could finally be happy. So yeah, the mom buys into the whole story too. She's like, if the island could be rid of all of the Eldians there, then we wouldn't have to suffer and we wouldn't need the Eldian warriors anymore. And Reiner looking at his mother, but Reiner, even you barely escaped from the island devils, right? So yeah, and she's like, Gabby's like, don't question. He survived on the island of rotten devils for 5 years. And Gabby says that even if it wasn't classified, it's stuff he wouldn't want to talk about. So Gabby is somewhat self-aware that Reiner probably doesn't want to recount his experiences, right? And then he says, "Forgive me, nephew." And Reiner's like, no, I can talk about it. It's fine. And Reiner says, "I infiltrated their military, and every last one of them was a savage, heartless devil." And I'm like, were they? That's the thing. Reiner, it's almost like Reiner has convinced himself. Reiner is trying to convince them. Reiner's perpetuating the narrative, right? Reiner is saying that the Survey Corps were heartless devils. He tells this story about them all. And I in the moment I was trying to figure out who he was talking about, he tells this story. And it's almost like he's telling this story to perpetuate this narrative, to convince himself that he shouldn't have sympathy for them. Because that's the thing. That's the thing of it all. Once we start having sympathy for the other side, then it becomes harder to get rid of them, right? So he's like, Reiner doesn't want to create a scenario in which he has sympathy for the other side, because he's suggesting that if I do that, then I won't want to kill them. I won't want to go through with it. So he tells this story. He makes up this narrative. It's not untrue. He just kind of tweaks it in a certain way where it sounds different than what it actually is, to convince himself that they are heartless devils. Yeah. He tells the story. So he says that during the entrance ceremony, one of them was eating a potato, right? And the instructor yelled at them. So he comments about Potato Girl. All right. And realizing that she'd share half with him. So he talks about Potato Girl, which is Sasha, that we know of at this point. And he says that they would share half with him. But it wasn't even, I like that the piece of potato they offered wasn't even close to half. I like that's the shocking thing. He's like, she was eating a raw potato and she said she'd share half, but it wasn't half. I like that's the shocking thing, right? That she did. Being considerate doesn't even cross their minds. It's interesting. And they said they are truly beyond all help. And I love that. I love the rain, the graininess. Like Reiner, this is Reiner's warrior persona convincing himself that they're beyond help, that they have to die. And it's like, but in his heart, Reiner does not believe this. This is all just it's all a narrative to just keep his family and their hopes that there is a goal in mind alive. There was an idiot who forgot why he went to the bathroom. So, why he went to the bathroom. Okay. I'm going to try to piece together who that was. An idiot who forgot why he went to the bathroom. And then saying an insincere jerk who only thought about himself. Okay. An insincere jerk who only thought of himself. Okay. And it gets closer and closer on him. It's great. An uptight oaf who only cared what others thought. Okay. Who only cared what other... I'm trying to figure out who these are, because Potato Girl's easy. Sasha's easy. Who only cared what others thought. A single-minded fool who charged ahead and the chumps who followed him. Well, the single-minded fool is Aaron. Absolutely. The single-minded fool is Aaron, without a doubt. Because, yeah, and the chumps who followed him. Yeah, because Aaron in season 1 was pretty single-minded. He was like, I'm going to kill the Titans and that's it. Yeah. And then there were all sorts of people there. And we were there too. My days there were true hell. And then, yeah, the thing switches. And they all look so surprised and shocked by this. They're all like, oh, and he says, I said too much, forget it. And the mom coming over, like, they're all really sad about that. And then Gabby says, what do you mean there's all sorts of people? They're bad people, right? Again, establishing that there's not just good and bad, that there's all kinds of shades, right? And then the mom says, that's right, Gabby. Those island devils turned our world into hell. There's no knowing when they'll attack with giant titans and flatten the world. So yeah, it's just framing the LDA, it's framing parody as just a constant threat. So I'm still wondering why the boy that forgot he went to the bathroom, the insincere jerk who only thought of himself, and the uptight oaf who only cared what others thought. So I'm wondering if the uptight oaf was maybe Armin? Maybe that only cared what others thought? And if this is Jean, the insincere jerk who only thought of himself, and if this is Connie, I know that this is clearly Sasha and that's clearly Aaron, but Connie, Jean, and Armin, I'm guessing that those are who he's talking about, that Connie forgot why he went to the bathroom. And Jean was... I need to go back and rewatch episodes 3 and 4, and maybe I'll do that before next episode and see who he's exactly talking about. The oaf that only cared what others thought. I feel like Armin's that one for sure, but maybe it's either Armin or Jean. But insincere jerk and an uptight oaf. But I don't consider Armin uptight. Curiouser and curiouser. But anyway, ever since that mom was like, okay, Reiner, I'm going to tell him it's up to us good aliens to make sure that they never do that. Yeah. And so, yeah. So basically, the way that Marley has framed this is that Marley has told their Eldians that you need to be part of our program and work with us to keep parody from destroying the world, from destroying everyone else. Basically, Marley's like, if you don't help us, then it's possible that parody is going to come over here and destroy everything, which they wouldn't, because the Founding Titan wants to keep them all, locked away behind the walls. But that's the threat, right? And the mom has totally bought into that, and she's got Gabby buying into it too. Those who left us and fled to the island deserve to be punished. So it's the idea of abandonment. They're the ones who abandoned us. So she's like, they left us to suffer, so we have to teach them a lesson, sort of thing. I still can't believe that one kid looks like Marco and has the shaved head like Connie. It's kind of wild. But yeah, so above the house, with the rain and everything, there was someone on the rooftop, and I wanted to come back and pause it because I was like, what is happening? And yeah, so they're above the rooftop listening, and I want to see, it's somebody. Is it Connie? It's somebody with a shaved head. Is it Connie? So we potentially have Mikasa, potentially. We potentially have Connie, and we potentially have Jean. So far in this. Okay. Sure. Haven't seen Armin, haven't seen Aaron, but we've seen Mikasa, Connie, and Jean. All right. Yeah, because that's clearly Connie jumping down from the roof, listening. And I like the fact that they're basically stalking Reiner. They're basically stalking Reiner around to gather intel about what's been going on in Marley and what the whole situation is, which is interesting. They're learning why the Marleyans think the way that they do. That whole thing of him just falling off the roof, though, was kind of freaky. I guess it was to, go with the noise of the lightning so that it wasn't noticeable, but it's still so weird. So then, yeah, we tie to the next day, and Reiner's like, Gabby, you seem down. And Gabby makes the note saying that Aunt Karina's worried about you. So Karina is Reiner's mother, okay? She says you've changed after coming back from the island alone, that you didn't come back with anybody else. Her 12-year-old son came back a grown man. You can't blame her. So yeah, Reiner's like, no. It's not that I changed. It's that I grew up while he was gone. I like that she says that you came back alone. Like, that made a difference. And Gabby says, it feels like you're lying. And he's like, what would I be lying about? And she's like, I don't know, but Aunt Karina knows. And so, so there's this whole thing. Okay, I heard it was a soldier. So something's happened. Something happened. There's guards there, and there's people looking around, and they said, I heard it was a soldier. So something's happened in that moment, like somebody died or was killed or something. Huh. See, this whole episode is setting little things up with the Survey Corps. It's setting little things up with the Levi Squad that I'm like, what's going on? Stuff's being set up. That's awful. Interesting. Like they're killing the soldiers off and taking their place. Okay. All right. So then we go here to the room where they say good morning. And there's Reiner. There's Colt. There's Peek gets the whole couch to herself. Peek is like, I'm used to being a quadruped, so y'all let me have my couch. And then Zeke and Galliard. So the 5, here's the thing. There's the 4 Titan Shifters and Colt that's going to inherit the Beast Titan. And then we learn about the Warhammer. Oh, I'm so excited. We learned about the Warhammer. Okay, so Galliard is like, it's not every day that we meet in the War Chief's room. So yeah, War Chief Zeke that was on the other side. It's not every day we meet in here. Where's the brass? And he's like, not in this room. Can't we just meet for some tea? So that was the line. That was the line that McGath got nervous about. He said, not in this room. That the Marley government, I'm going to write that down, was not in this room. Okay. We're going to talk about this conversation, right? Because that line... Oh, Zeke is planning something. Zeke is planning something. Okay, not in this room. Can't we just meet for some tea? Okay, we're going to talk about this. So yeah, Galliard, he's like, right, sure. Now then, the last battle made it clear that normal weapons will overtake Titans in the near future. So, at first their conversation doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. The weaker Marley becomes, the more the Eldia race is threatened. Right. Okay. So essentially what Zeke is saying in this conversation, and I think Zeke knows that they're listening. He knows they're listening. But so he is suggesting that Marley is keeping Eldia safe. Right? Because as awful as their circumstance is, as awful as it is, as shitty as their situation is, Zeke is acknowledging that the weaker Marley becomes, the more the Eldian race is threatened. And there is some truth to that. Because, like Udo said back at the dock, those prisoners of war that are going back are going to tell the world about how bad the Eldian race is and how the subjects of Ymir need to be wiped out. So, Zeke is suggesting that as long as Marley is in power, and as long as the Titans help Marley, there is some security there. Yeah, it sucks, and their lives are shit, but if Marley falls and the rest of the world gets their hand on Eldia, they're not going to... they don't want the Titans to exist. They know how bad the Titans are. They'll just kill all of them. Because they're like, screw this. We don't want your Titan powers. We don't want them running amok. Just get rid of all the Eldians and we won't have this problem. That's what he's suggesting. So that's interesting. Our existence is in danger. To rectify this, Marley must obtain the founding Titans and Parady's resources. And I like that he has the hand on the globe. And we get to the Vitrola, right? Which is what they're listening through. They're listening through the sonograph there. The world must be strongly reminded of the threat the island poses. To tell that story, we need a narrator. Okay. And the Tiber family will fulfill that role. So, okay, we have the Tibers. God, there's a lot of kids. So, it looks like there's 2 grandparents, 2 parents there, and 5 kids. Curious that. So we have the Tibers. Let's talk about the Tibers. The Tibers are the family of the Warhammer. Okay. And there's the grandparents, right? And there's a mom and a dad. And then there are 5 children. Weren't there 5 children with the royal family? Weren't there 5 children with the Reese family? Wasn't there? There was Dirk. There was Frida. There was Olkin, and there was the girl, and there was a little girl, and there was Historia, right? There's 5 children, weren't there altogether? I think so, because yeah, Grisha crushed the mom and the one daughter. and the 2 other kids. There were 5 kids. There were 5 Reese children and the mom and dad. We didn't see the grandparents. They didn't exist because they became Titan Shifters and got eaten. But it's curious that there's a parallel here to the Reese family. There's a curious parallel there that I find interesting. Yeah, the Tiber family will fulfill that role and be the narrators. So they're going to be the narrators. And we're going to talk about that role here in a second as Zeke explains it. And Colt seems very suspicious of this. He says the family holding the Warhammer Titan. And Peak says it's said the Tibers never sent the Warhammer Titan to enemy soil. Okay, so the Tibers that Warhammer Titan has stayed in Marley this entire time. And Peak's suggesting they've never sent it off to battle somewhere else. It's remained on the home turf. They're influential abroad for driving away King Fritz during the Great Titan War. So I'm guessing, I'm just going to guess that Helos was at the time the Warhammer. And they drove the founding Titan away. I'm just going to take a guess. I'm going to take a guess that that's what happened. That the Battle of Helos was won by the Warhammer was Helos, or Helos, however you say it. They were the Warhammer. They drove King Fritz away and allowed Marley to gain the 7 Titan Shifters. And from what it sounds like the trade-off was that Marley's like, we'll put y'all up on the Tibers up on a pedestal. We'll put y'all up on a pedestal and your family will be the wealthiest in all the land if you help us get the other Titans. And I think that's what went down. Sounds like it. And Peak's very knowledgeable about our Titan history. The world will listen to them. Okay. The world will listen. So, the Tibers have a good reputation. The Tibers have a reputation. They are known for being the end-all, be-all Titan shifter other than the founding Titan. They drove the founding Titan away. The world will listen to the Tibers. Okay. And that's why Zeke wants to use them. And he's like, that's Peak for you, precisely. Like, God, Zeke. But the Tibers have been living their life in their huge mansions. So yeah, Galliard's like, yeah, it's established here they've been living their life in their huge mansions. So they seem to be in a different caliber than the rest of Eldia. It seems like because they were the big heroes of Marley, the Marleyan government has probably been like, fine, if y'all want to live in luxury, cool, do it. But you are our trump card, our end-all, be-all. Interesting. Why would they come out of the woodwork now and pretend to be heroes? And Zeke says, I know how you feel, but the Tibers are concerned about Marley too. Of course they are. But if it saves our motherland, Marley, I'll be grateful. So, okay. Interesting. God. Okay. All right. So Galliard, we're setting up some things here. We're setting up that the Tibers are like the wealthy Eldians. They are the heroes of Marley, even though Galliard doesn't really, he says pretending to be heroes. Galliard doesn't think that they're heroes. It seems like Galliard is mad that they've hidden away in their mansions while clearly the rest of Eldia has suffered. So he's like, why are we going to go to them, these pretentious elitists that aren't like the rest of us and haven't suffered like the rest of us? Why are we going to them for help? We don't need them. But Zeke is like, they have a reputation. We need them to help tell a story and get the rest of the world to think that we have conquered parity and that we're a threat. Okay. And then, what did he say right before that? What did he just say right before that? Yeah. He says, why would they leave their mansions now? So yeah, Galliard makes the note. He's been living their lives in their huge mansions. So why would they leave now? Why come out of the woodwork and pretend to be heroes? And Zeke says that they're concerned about Marley too. Yeah, the Tibers don't want Marley to fall because that's their meal ticket. That's been their life of luxury. If they fall, since they have a Titan, then the rest of the world's going to try to destroy them too. So yeah, it makes sense, right? And then Reiner, I want to note about this. If it saves our motherland, Marley, I'll be grateful. And Colt kind of looks. So my question in this moment is, one, do the Titan shifters in the room, does everyone in the room know that Marley's listening to them? That's question one. Zeke knows, I think, that the Marleyans are listening. Zeke knows. Does Colt know? I don't think so. Does Galliard and Peak know? I don't think so. Does Reiner know? That's the question. Does Reiner know that they're listening? Because that line, if it saves our motherland Marley, I'll be grateful. That's like the ultimate patriotic line. He's like, I'm serving Marley as the ideal model citizen, right? He's like, if it saves Marley, I'll be grateful and I'll do it. Is that what Reiner wants them to hear? I'm wondering, is Reiner being set up to be like a double agent? I don't know. I don't think so. But it's moments like that call it all into question, right? Of whether Zeke and Reiner have an agenda that is different than everybody else's, right? But we don't know. We don't know. Our warrior unit can cooperate with the Tybers, Reiner says this, and serve as the backbone for restoring Marley. And so, I don't know. In that moment, Reiner seems to be on board with it. So maybe Reiner has convinced himself. Maybe he isn't a double agent. Maybe he really has drank the Kool-Aid that much and has convinced himself that, yeah, the Tybers can serve as a backbone and give Marley enough cred to keep the others at bay while we go to parody. So he's like, Marley is going to need the Tybers to spin a story to get the rest of the world to not attack them. Okay. All right. And here in Liberio, there will be a festival here soon. And Reiner's like, a festival? And he says, VIPs from abroad will be invited to hear an announcement from the Tybers. So Zeke has set this up. Zeke has set up this festival. Funny that we're setting up a festival. We're setting up a festival that in Liberio, where Reiner is from, and Reiner doesn't even know about it. Zeke has set up this festival where the Tybers are going to come out and make an announcement. Funny that. Because we're setting up that the Survey Corps is potentially infiltrated in Liberio right now, where this festival's happening. Something's going down. And then Zeke says that the announcement from the Tybers, within a year, will control Parody Island. The fate of Marley and all Eldians rest in this plan. It cannot fail. And I love that we cut through everybody back to that recorder, and it's where the Marleyans are listening. For the future of our motherland, Marley, we must join our hearts as one. That almost seems like a code, right? Join our hearts as one. Something's amok. Something's amok. Something's amok. I'm telling y'all, this join our hearts as one. Something is going down. And I don't know what it is, but something's going down. Because, yeah, this whole thing, the idea of having the Tybers come announce, because, yeah, they want the Tybers to announce that Marley is going to take parody within the year to establish this grand story that's going to spread throughout the land and spread like wildfire to the other nations, and so the other nations are going to back off. Okay. But, yeah, this whole join our hearts as one thing, something's amiss. Zeke is planning something. The conversation with Colt at the beginning where he's like, once you inherit my power, you'll learn my secret. There's something there. And I don't know if Reiner is in on it. If Zeke's using Reiner, I don't know. But something's up with Zeke. Something's up. And then there's the commander. And then the commander says, Galliard seems to have some complaints, but he always gets the job done. Seems like his character. And if that's all they're saying, I'm not concerned. Except for that. And McGaff is the one that says, except for that one line of Zeke's. And they're like, what? Not in this room, huh? That's the thing. It almost seems like that's a code that Zeke is like, oh, well, it's just us in this room. The Marleyans aren't in this room. Right? It's like McGaff is on to Zeke. That Zeke knew the Marleyans were listening, so Zeke chose his words carefully. Because, yeah, it just sounds like they're just having a normal conversation. It's all for the benefit of Marley. But Zeke's planning something. There's something going down. And I don't know what it is, but I just have that feeling. And then we cut to Reiner watching them train, watching these little kids train. And there's Gabby and Falco. And Gabby's better than Falco. And then Reiner's like, am I going back to that island? But here's the question, though. And the question in all of this is, if the Survey Corps is there on parody, are they going back to parody? Because if the Survey Corps is in parity and Reiner and all of them actually went back, there'd be nobody really to defend the wall and everything. So something's going to happen before then, right? The Survey Corps has infiltrated Marley through, I'm sure, the scouting ships that were taken over. I'm sure that's what's happened. They've infiltrated through that way, and there's stuff going down, and okay. Okay. So yeah, stuff's going down. I have a feeling that the Levi Squad has infiltrated Marley. This whole festival that's coming up is going to be the time bomb. That is when things are going to snap. That's when things are going to be set in motion, is this damn festival that's happening. That the Tybers are coming out of high. It's too convenient, right? It's too convenient. They're setting it up. It's so convenient that the Warhammer, the secret Titan we've been hiding all these years, it's never left enemy soil, the secret Titan that seems pretty critical to all this, they're coming out of hiding for this one night only to give this announcement and be the narrators for Zeke and his grand plan here to go overtake parity. And it's happening at this festival, and the Survey Corps just happens to be there. So I'm like, there's no way Zeke's working with the Survey Corps, right? There's no way. Right? But 4 years have passed. So I don't know. It just all seems so coincidental that the Survey Corps seems to have infiltrated Marley and infiltrated Liberio. Zeke has planned a festival that Reiner, who is a resident of Liberio, wasn't even aware of, and has invited the Tybers, the Warhammer, who is the critical piece, seemingly, to this festival where the Survey Corps just happens to be. It seems suspicious. It seems suspicious. And the whole thing of join our hearts as one, like join all the Eldians together. Something's up. Something is up in all this, and I don't know what it is. That's the problem. Something is happening, y'all. I don't know exactly what, but it's about to go down. And we've set all this stuff up with Reiner. Reiner's character really grew on me these last 2 episodes. Like, I really like Reiner's character. I'm very curious to see what we do with his character in this season. If you had told me from the beginning that Reiner was going to be a major player in all this, I would have been like, what? But here we are. And Falco and Gabby, and setting things up with Connie potentially being there, and Jean and Mikasa. And of course they're going to save Aaron and Armin for last. Of course they are. And they're going to save Levi for last. Of course they are. And Hanji and all them, because they're the most recognizable. They're going to save them for last. And Sasha, if she's there. God, this episode was really, really good. And there's so much stuff being set up, and I have so many questions. But it's like a mystery. It's like a damn Scooby-Doo mystery. Like, what things are going down at this festival. I want to meet the Tybers. I want to see the parallels between them and the Reeses. I'm so excited. Galliard and Peek are a thing. It's just, this episode was like a bomb of exposition, and it's exactly what I wanted. So, thanks, Isayama! Yay! So, yeah. In any case, I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction and this discussion. This was wonderful. But yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please, no spoilers. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, Whiteboard Kun and I will be back next time with episode 3 of Attack on Titan, the final season. Bye.